All right, I am happy to be joined with two members from the medical team at Numinus, Chief Scientific Officer Sharan Sidhu, along with Chief Medical Officer Dr. Evan Wood. Sharan, Dr. Wood, thank you for joining me here today.
Hi, Dal. How are you doing?
Good. Great to have you on. I want to begin based off of your latest announcement. Numinus will begin a phase 1 clinical trial of natural psilocybin mushroom extraction, which is being conducted at your company lab. Saying that, Sharan, if successful, what would this translate into from a medical standpoint, as well as the importance of time and time again, you outlining the natural approach?
Well, it basically does outline that it is possible to use natural sources of medicinal compounds to be able to alleviate some of the mental health issues that we're seeing arising. And it does also go to show that Health Canada is open to looking at these products as a possible therapy.
You were quoted in your latest press release saying, quote, "We are confident that this trial will document the natural psilocybin extractions meet health requirements for safety, efficacy, quality, and ultimately enable the establishment of better access to this medicine." Those are encouraging words for psilocybin. What makes you feel so confidently about that?
We've been working diligently to cover all of these points. And it's all the points that we're trying to cover and all the modules that we're trying to cover as far as the requirements for Health Canada. So far, so good. Everything is working the way we are expecting it to work. All the experimentation, all the quality data, all the efficacy data, and all of our endpoints are meeting requirements for every single experiment that we're doing. So the confidence is rising. Again, until we have the data from the end of the trial, we won't know for sure. But as soon as we have the data from the end of the trial, it kind of fills in all the gaps.
Encouraging to say the least. Dr. Wood, Health Canada continues to grant exemptions for certain patients to use psilocybin along with psychotherapy in situations when other treatments fail. So how much interest and growth are you seeing from policymakers pertaining to this medicine right now?
Yeah, I think there continues to be a tremendous amount of interest. It's driven not only by the research that's unfolding, by what's happening in the economy with different groups coming into the space wanting to provide value. And I think it's quite interestingly, it doesn't carry the cultural baggage that, for instance, medical cannabis once had. I'm seeing interest across the political spectrum where this just isn't a lightning rod. Yeah. So both sides of the political spectrum, I think people are grappling with, the high rates of untreated mental illness, the challenges society faces with substance use disorders. And so I think there's just tremendous interest, and that's going to continue to grow as the research continues to unfold.
How much does COVID have an impact on this? Because if we've talked about right now, it's like our healthcare system seems to be at capacity, but has that changed, I guess, a lot of the complexion of the overall industry and where this is going?
I think there's just a sentiment that we're going to be grappling with COVID-related mental health challenges
Right.
for the foreseeable future, and I think there's going to be a whole host of things that happen. I think there's going to be a tremendous relief and a lot of people returning to wellness. But there will be some people that continue to struggle. First responders and healthcare practitioners that have been on the front lines. Other people that have been working in service industries or meat packing plants or other places where it's been extremely anxiety inducing, and people may grapple with those types of things. And I think, for people with very serious mental illnesses like schizophrenia, psychosis, that's a whole other conversation. But for, lack of a better description, garden variety anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, uncomplicated substance use disorder, we don't have good treatments. And this treatment modality has the potential to be something new, highly effective, that I believe will become part of the mainstream healthcare system in the future.
Interesting. What do you think? Like, and I don't want to put timelines on things, and maybe a question for both of you, but research does take time, but we are also in a world right now where we need help real fast. So how much do you see the industry maturing? And Sharan, I guess we'll start with you, but how much do you see this maturing in the short term?
Again, it's all going to depend on how Health Canada approaches this, because the substances that we're working with are all controlled, so under narcotic regulations. So in order for them to become mainstream, they would have to be removed from there, or there would have to be a blanket kind of exemption. And we don't like to compare it to cannabis, but it was done with cannabis, where cannabis was under these schedules, and it was removed from that schedule. So in order for it to become a mainstream medicine, we would have to see something like that, and a change in how these compounds are seen in general by the regulator. Obviously, we still have abuse associated with things like LSD and ecstasy. But again, they do have a huge treatment potential as well. So there's a lot to think about here, and there's a lot to unpack by the regulators. We do know that they won't take any steps. They won't take any steps too quickly. They're going to have to, make sure of their efficacy and safety. But we're talking about a difference in psilocybin, psilocybin mushrooms and LSD, right? So we may see a movement of some of these ingredients and some of these compounds and some of the naturally associated source materials quicker than we may see for something like an LSD.
Right.
But and that's the way we've got to approach it, is that the more information that we can provide Health Canada, the more they are probably willing to look at it and move towards maybe descheduling these compounds and maybe descheduling these materials. And that's the hope, and we continue to work with Health Canada. We continue to provide them with evidence, and that's essentially how we're going to see this go.
Dr. Wood, do you think that we see certain compounds legalized within the next year?
Yeah, it's important to differentiate between them, because it's in the public domain that the MAPS phase 3 clinical trial has now been completed. It sort of wound down as the COVID epidemic emerged. Those findings will be forthcoming, and that's the first phase 3 multi-site clinical trial.
Mm-hmm.
My lab at the University of British Columbia was a participating site, and it's in the public domain that people are anticipating that'll be a positive study. And so some medications are approved for use with a single phase 3 clinical trial, and that'll be the work of MAPS to be exploring that. They're also planning a second phase 3 trial, which a confirmatory trial would meet the standard of the FDA and Health Canada. So that drug is well on its way to approval, assuming that the phase 3 findings show that it's effective. For psilocybin, as Sharon's alluding to, it's a naturally occurring molecule that's been used in traditional medicine for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And similar to cannabis, which a special regulatory framework was created for medical cannabis that allowed people to access that, you could see a conversation happening with regulators that takes naturally occurring psilocybin products and puts them in a different category than, for instance, a synthetic molecule that's being pursued for a synthetic medication with a drug identification number. So these are active conversations in the policy domain. And I think psilocybin won't necessarily be held to that standard of requiring multiple phase 3 trials, though I think they'll be valuable by virtue of the fact that it's a naturally occurring molecule that's been used in traditional medicine contexts, which sort of takes a different pathway in conversation. And so it'll be interesting to see if the dominoes fall there more rapidly or on a similar timeline to MDMA, which I think is short term. We're not talking about 5 years from now.
Interesting. Well, your latest trial, it forms a partnership with KGK Science, which is a research institution based out of London, Ontario, Canada, that has worked with organizations like Health Canada and the FDA. So saying that, I guess, how was the conversation? Like, how did it all begin? How was this all put together? Knowing a lot of the relationships and connections that you have based on your career.
Yeah, we'll give you a sense of what we're doing. Obviously, in the marketplace, there's a number of groups that are pursuing synthetic psilocybin that's essentially developed by precursor chemicals in a laboratory. We're taking a different approach. We think that not only is natural psilocybin potentially, friendlier for the environment because it's not made with chemicals, you can grow it as an agricultural product, but there's also molecules that likely coexist with psilocybin that may provide a synergistic benefit. And so we basically went out to the open market, and we're lucky in that our science officer has relationships with a number of contract research organizations, as I do myself. And essentially we selected an organization that has a track record with these naturally occurring sort of natural health products or regulatory strategies for naturally occurring products. So they have done phase 1 trials with cannabinoid compounds and things like that, which is a different pathway than if you have a molecule that you have developed in your laboratory that you want to take through a pharmaceutical drug path. So that's why we selected KGK, and they've got a lot of experience there. And just to put it into context, these phase 1 trials are really about measuring the effects and documenting the safety, and they can be done very quickly. So that enables us to, if we could do this trial ourselves technically, but working with a contract research organization, for lack of a better description, they take developers and innovators like Sharan and her team in the laboratory, and myself and my team in the clinic with therapists and physicians, and basically grab us by the scruff of our neck and say, okay, this is the protocol, this is the investigator's brochure, this is the regulatory materials for Health Canada, this is how we can get everything that policymakers at the FDA or Health Canada would require to demonstrate that your therapeutic is safe for use in humans. And that opens the whole door to everything that could come next in terms of additional clinical trials, in terms of compassionate use programs or other mechanisms that first have that gate of a phase 1 trial to demonstrate that it does produce psychedelic effects. We know it's going to, that we know it's safe. Well, we know that mushrooms are safe. But Health Canada, we couldn't say to them, trust us, we know it has a psychedelic effect and we know it's safe. This study enables us to make those determinations.